This-
Hey,
And that's the first sound people are gonna hear on
I'm here
this
for it.
episode of Grieving.
I'm here for it. Grieving is multi-layered. Grieving is multifaceted. Like there is no one way to grieve. What are we talking about?
Correct. So originally, what I had in mind to discuss with you, which could still pop up, I'm sure,
Yeah, yeah.
but I had originally wanted to talk to you about about writing, about the healing powers of writing, about your work in the community and with the kiddos and what sort of impact that has had on you. Um, and then something happened, which I will let you tell the folks at home. Something happened, and I checked in with you yesterday, and I was like, "Hey, friend, do you maybe want to reschedule? Because I want to be I want to be sensitive to what's happening." And you were like, "Oh," and I was like, "Okay."
No,
Um,
like
but by all means, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
no, like just to the people at home, to the people at Stop and Shop, to the people who are like perusing the day. No, like so this is like you know how people talk about how when you like say, when you make plans and you like you really want to do something, and I still obviously I still want to do it, right? Because I said I got the opt out or like the hold up, let's like reschedule. Um, so like
Yeah,
it's the idea of like when you schedule something far out and then like life just lifes.
right. It
So
does.
like in the past, what is it like? So like last week, as we are recording this, I lost an uncle. So we have been going through it and between that and like checking in on family, like just general grief, vicarious grief, that's been the biggest part. But also there's like things happening around like my world of work. So as we're talking about the kiddos, and it's like there are decisions being made in the city as always that are like affecting our kids and affecting the funding of their programs for the summer. So there's grief in that too, because like some of the things are being lost, and like the people who are like in the field are working to find solutions or trying to find like band-aids. Um, while yeah, while funding gets cut or like reallocated and so on and so forth. So like there's like again, there's grieving on a couple different levels. The obvious piece being like I lost a family member who has been like instrumental in my life and many other people's lives, and like somebody who we just didn't expect it was like it was random, it was like quick. It was a thing that nobody really expected, which makes it worse. So
Mhm.
again, like I was pumped, like, and I think it was funny because, like, I think in conversations leading up to this, we were talking about like the idea of because you asked me like a while back, yo, like how you feel, like how are things going, and I was like, yo, like things are really going really well right now, and I'm working to kind of be in it and not focus on like
It
the
was
shoe
the
fall.
day prior.
Yeah,
It was the day prior. Yeah.
yeah, and because yeah, because it's also like I think but also that there's value in that too. Like I think the idea of like working to guard yourself from like that worry, because that worry doesn't really change anything. Like the shoe's gonna fall, and you got to figure it out, right? So again, so I think being present in moments is important, and that's like the happy moments and the sad moments.
Yeah.
Um, so like yeah. So like right now is a sad moment, and I felt like it was important to like not duck it,
Mm. Why? Why not duck it?
because I over the past like I've been working really hard over the past couple of years to lean into the things and like learn from the things. And also recently, like I'm gonna say his name because like it was a dope quote. Like John Rosario, one of my colleagues, like said, "There are no wasted seasons."
Mm.
Um, so the idea being like again, what I need to learn in this moment, what I need to feel in this moment. And I think it's easy to. I mean, it's easy to present. I think it's important that like we have these conversations. I don't see these conversations happening as much as I need them to be seen. Um,
Like
and I'm just
conversations on grief or
not necessarily well, grief, yes, but also
Mhm.
like conversations around like I think we could all front if we wanted to, and I'm trying not to.
Mm,
Like and so I think what's funny is in I want to say like in one on the previous podcast on the previous like podcast iteration, um like I think one of the conversations we had was like when I heard it back, I was like, oh, I really need to go to therapy again. And this is like me after mad years of therapy. So,
hmm.
I think the it's been helpful to change the approach, and I'm working to deliberately do the brave thing.
So one of the things that came to mind for me was we've been friends for a minute, and I've seen you through a few losses essentially.
Yeah.
And so and have seen also that transition of like, damn, I should probably go to therapy to I just talked to my therapist yesterday. Um, how I know that grieving doesn't always remain the same for everybody. It's not consistent at all. That's not the nature of it. And it's going to be different for every loss and even different within each loss. But what, if anything, has been different for you in terms of like the tools that you've gained, like the different approaches that you've been taking to grieving? You talked about some of that, but like I'd love to hear more and hear you like dive into like what has been different for you or what are you still like trying to gather and have to be part of your toolkit.
I think resilience is like an overused word. I hate resilience. Like I hate it. I hate it as like I hate it as a concept that we speak about, but
Mm,
like there's something to it, right? So again, I think a part of it is like a lot of it is like shifting perspective. A lot of it is like, all right, cool. Like I think for me, we were talking about community before too. So I think for me, like it's important for me to make sure that in losses, the people around me are good to the point where sometimes I don't always check to see if I'm good, right? So again, because a
mm,
lot of it is like trying to make sure people around me are fine. Um, but I think like so a part of it for me is also like trusting the circle to help. Like so I didn't post it, I didn't make it anything. It wasn't like a grandiose announcement or anything. But like I did tell people who like were important to me. Like I told you, I told like who I knew would check up and I knew would like make sure I felt like support. Um, And it's also like people who I know would ask like what I need, even though I don't know what I need. But like people who
yeah,
would like, but like the people who would allow me the space, right? People who would allow me the
yeah,
space to like feel and have the conversations. I think I'm also in a really good place like work wise where I got the phone call when I was at work. I hit my boss up while I was leaving. Because it was never a question and I knew I'd be supported in that way, but it was just like, yo, like I gotta be out. There's a thing I gotta deal with. I gotta make sure my mom's straight. Right.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so like that was and again, like there was no friction, no resistance. And I like likened it to and some it is a privilege. I'm not like it is it this isn't a thing that everybody has, right? So again, 11 years ago I lost my grandmother, and one of the things was like it was a whole other industry. It was retail. It wasn't, there wasn't, you work to get these jobs that give you these benefits. Um, and before I didn't have it. So like that wasn't dealt with responsibly because like I was going through it and I just didn't, yeah. So like I just wouldn't show up to work and eventually that just became a thing. Right. So, I think being around like the spaces I've been in have been like really supportive. And some
yeah,
of those are spaces that I've chosen. I mean, like they're all spaces I've chosen. But like I think I'm trusting a part of it is also not lying about how I'm feeling and allowing the supports to actually like support. So like we had a check-in yesterday and on Wednesday, sorry. We keep on giving out like dates and times and I feel like it's not going to be helpful for like
for the
continuity.
people at home,
Yeah.
they'll be fine. They will be fine.
No. No, but like so like yeah, we had a check-in and it was like it was my turn. How you feeling? Fist to five, whatever. I was like, yo, like honestly, and it's funny because like even with check-ins, we do that in the school system too. Because a part of it is like we want to know where our kids are, and we want them to know where we are, so they know how to like move. It's an empathy exercise. It helps us to actually be more practice empathy, right?
Right.
And like hold people how they need to be held, right? So yeah, like I was asked, and I was like, yo, I don't even have a number. I'm just thugging my way through. And they were
Mm,
like, but what I appreciate the pushback because it
mm,
came. It was like, yo, but like, no, like we need to know,
yeah.
right? So the second question always gets me, and just knowing that the people who I'm around actually care. That's been huge. That I mean, and I knew that, but it's just like I think I'm trusting the circle more to be the circle. I'm
Mm,
trusting the work that I've done. I'm trusting the people I've surrounded myself with. Like I've done the work and I've created the spaces, so I just needed to trust them more.
yeah. Yeah. You spoke about um you spoke about like picking and choosing who it is that you shared your grief with, like letting them know what was happening. And that shit is so real because
Hmm.
you can't just share that with any old body, even people
Hmm.
that think that they are your friend
Yeah.
or think that they're close enough to you or like there's some people that for a variety of reasons like they can't show up for you, they don't have the capacity to show up for you, they'll make you feel worse
Hmm.
than you already feel, they'll make it about themselves somehow, they like maybe just don't have the capacity to show up for you in a way that is helpful to you, and all of that is okay.
Hmm.
But I just wanted to touch on that we get to pick and choose who we share the things with, for a
Which is
variety of reasons.
which is a funny dynamic, right? Because again, a huge Achilles heel of mine is that like I think because of trauma and because of fear and because of a lot of things like I have control issues. Like I'm gonna put this in. So it's like it's a way to exercise control, but still allow good things to happen,
Mm,
right? So it's like a it's an interesting dynamic there because again, yeah, because it's and again there are multiple ways to do that. I just didn't want the attention of like the because it's some yeah like I don't always want to be talking about it either. So it's like it's literally like I gate kept the information because I knew that certain people it's so I make this joke all the time that if you've never cooked before, you're not the one doing like Thanksgiving dinner. Right? So like if you're not cooking on Sundays, if you're not cooking on Saturdays, if you're not doing the family
mm,
meals, you have to graduate to like that meal, right?
right.
So I think for me it's like the people that got the information are people who like graduated to that position.
Yeah.
Right? So like I knew I had a good idea that like these people could be trusted with the information.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think we have like a there's different circles. There's different levels of circles.
Hmm.
And it's these folks get this information, these folks get this information, and so on and so forth. And I don't even know that I would dub that like a control thing in a sort of negative connotation. I think it
Hmm.
just makes sense. Like it's your vulnerability and you get to take care of it. And you're not, while simultaneously you're not trying to carry it alone. You are being open with people, you are being vulnerable, you are looking for support, and that's the point of having a circle,
Yeah.
of having that circle.
Whereas in the past, like again, I wouldn't have so I either wouldn't have shared it or I would have just given it to one person.
Mm.
Right?
Hmm.
Like and again, like when you did hi person. Oh like no, and a part of it too, like by sharing it, like it's sharing it allows other people to show up in different ways. It doesn't put the burden on any one person. Like again, like it's I've been working consistently to lean into the feelings,
Mm.
to not lie about the feelings within reason, but again, like still not lying, but also like everybody doesn't get everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and also setting the boundaries in that too. Like, yo, I'm not. like I'm not hitting these events up today because like it's just not a thing that can happen for me.
Right.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to be communicative because like historically I am the guy who would just like climb up and just not and just historically I've gone the other way and just like climbed up and like been like, why is nobody here? But I didn't give them any information. I didn't say anything. Like I would
Mm.
cause my own spiral.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean that's what a lot of dudes in particular are taught to do anyway. It's like
Mhm.
I don't even know that most fellas would have the vocab to say that they are clamming up. It would just be, nah, I'm just dealing with it. Or to say something as like as
I'm
vague as
fighting
like, yeah, I'm
demons.
going through it, but and then like that's it. That's as far as it'll go, if that.
It's usually I'm pushing. It's usually like and again like we I mean, we could have the masculinity conversation, but I think it doesn't have to be like the because but I think a lot of people know, right? I think a lot of it is like there's machismo involved, but there's also like the idea of like I'm supposed to have it all taken care of, right? I'm supposed to like
Mm,
not be, like again, it's to tough it out. It's like there again, we see that in a lot of ways that like gender is policed by others and by ourselves, right? So again, there is like that stuff is highly like enforced,
yeah.
right? So for me, like I think even in those spaces, it's about like so I think a lot of the work I've done, whether it be like with the kids or like just as an adult dealing with stuff, has been like helping to kind of create the spaces that I needed. So fortunately, these are conversations that because again, like so I was I don't know if I've ever said this on a recording, but I was the person who was like tricked into therapy because I was going through the things and like um the person I was with at the time like saw some things in me that like I didn't yeah so again so like so the therapist became like the therapist became a mentor and like we've been connected for a really long time but again I've had access to have these conversations and a lot of people have not,
Mm,
so trying to like create spaces where these conversations can be had, which I love that that's happening more.
yes,
um
agreed.
and that's the thing that like again so fortunately, I had the person who cared enough to be like, "Yo, go over there."
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
like and that's the thing. And even with that, like I still have the habits, right? So a part of it is like it's I had the benefit of like being put into like caring spaces. And so like even again, listening back to the last podcast, I knew, okay, I remember this. This sounds like I need to go there, right? So I actually had a
Mm,
roadmap. Um Yeah, and I think the fact that we're actually having these conversations, that we're normalizing these conversations, that a little bit of death exists, right? I'm gonna shout you out too, because again, I did a little, I've done a little bit of death a couple times, and like from those dudes have come up to me to be like, "Yo, that's," I've had those conversations too, which has spawned other things. So again, I think as long as we keep on creating like amazing places where people can be held, like
yeah.
we're creating a ripple effect.
Yeah. Um, and we can have the masculine conversation because patriarchy deserves to be punched in the face every day, but also it needs a space to cry. And
But because it got punched in the face, or like I mean, like it deserved, but also feel the things. Like you deserved it, you got hit, feel the things.
but I love that. I have been seeing that. I love that the men I care about the most in my life are men that are like that are seeking therapy, if not already in therapy, that are, you know, talking about their feelings, that are like, yo, I need XYZ. Like it's so important and it in turn makes me feel safer with them, with y'all. And so I love that. I love that this is becoming a thing and that it's becoming more normalized like it needs to, because at the end of the day, it just harms the people that think they benefit from it the most. It harms them as well.
We
And
can't
it
keep
keeps a lot of bullshit rolling.
we can't keep dying at like 52. Like that can't be a thing. Like, right? Like it's because
For
what
real.
happens is that, like, yeah, at some point, like you bottle things up enough, like it's gonna find a way out.
Right. Right. We think of feelings as like this super soft, fluffy thing, but really it's out to murk you,
Yeah.
is what you just said.
Hmm. Like it'll catch up. Like it does catch up. So again, like having the spaces where, because there's relief in like talking. So like I know specifically like in dealing with these things, like there's been a lot of like help and like, and that's the thing. Like when people ask what you need, like a lot of it is like, dog, just listen. I'm not asking you to fix anything, right? So a lot of like these
Mhm.
conversations, I've left them feeling relieved, like being able to breathe a little bit deeper, like not
Yeah.
feeling as heavy in my chest, right? So again, that's a gift that I don't know, that I'm sure that that's a gift that like more men need to know that they can trust, but also um they have to also curate the spaces because like not every space is a trusting space. Like
Right.
it's there's a level of bravery involved, but also like there's a level of creating the infrastructure. And a part of it for me is like I've been spending a long time, like I want to say like since my grandmother, because again, like when you grow older, like the deaths become more significant. There's always
Mhm.
been deaths, but they become more they become like it's like Tetris. Like I've made this analogy before. Like the layers are going.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, like so yeah, so a part of it is like it's creating, I think in that space it was like, all right, cool, I need to kind of figure these things out. And I think it's cool that like 11 years down the road, like the things I learned then are helping me push through here, and that there continues to be growth.
Mm. You interrupted yourself earlier when you were saying that that there were men who approached you after your performance at A Little Bit of Death. Some people are going to listen to this and be like, what the fuck are y'all talking about A Little Bit of Death? Guess you're going to have to hop on Google, friend. I'm kidding. I'll
It's
tell you
funny because
eventually.
I'm talking about a little bit of death while also discussing big death. So like it's just funny nuance. Go ahead.
I'm gonna somehow circle right back to that right there. Um, but I want to know what it is what were some of the things that were said to you after your performance at A Little Bit of Death.
Um, I'm trying to so like I'm trying to remember the like so the one that happened like I did the performance that happened like I want to say because there have been a couple like but there's one like after there's one where I did speak about my grandmother's passing,
Mhm.
right? And I think that was the one where and I think as I've done them like I've been again like I said I've been doing a lot of the work to kind of like lean in more, and I think that's whether it be in my writing or in the things that I share, like I think it's evident. Like no, like, not that I think like it's evident because I know I'm working harder, and it hurts more putting it on the page, and
Mhm.
um and I've gotten the feedback around it too. So like in having the conversations, like people have spoken to me about like people that live like, again like death is very common. Death is not a thing that like it comes for all of us. It's around all of us, and I think um everybody's trying to find whether they're looking with intention or not. Like I think people are trying to find models of how to deal with this stuff, right? So I think
Mm.
so in the conversation people came up to me to be like, yo, this is what because like, this is what I've been going through this too. These are things, and that's the thing. I think we're all the I the beautiful thing of leaning in is because like it becomes like a great space of connection,
Yeah.
right? So like because
Mhm.
we're trained to be individualistic, even though like that's not our lineage or our culture. Like that's just not where we're from. We're from like story circles. We're from like we're from a lot of like really like communal places, but now
Right.
we have these apartments that like kind of segment us all away from each other. So we live like very individualistic lives, and so I think it's hard for us to recognize that like the people around us are going through the same things.
Mm.
So when we share these things on stage or in conversation or like just in right as like a blurb on like that black screen on IG. Like,
Hmm.
like I think it like because like that I've also had opportunities based on that too. Like so like when we have these when we have these conversations, like it endears other people to reach out to us, and sometimes they don't. But again, like they start their own journey, right? So I think
Right.
um like and you become a safer space because again, like I think people are inspired to do the things in the ways that I've been inspired to do the things by seeing other people do them, right? So I think it's a connecting. These are all connecting spaces. Like none of this stuff is new, but I think it's important to kind of go back to like what has traditionally worked for us, like just sharing the emotions, sharing the things, and healing communally.
Right. We were never meant to grieve alone. That is one of the many gifts of like colonialism. We so many presents none of us asked for, but grieving alone is one of them. And you mentioned that people are looking for models, or they don't have models like on how to grieve. We don't know how to grieve, like
All
how
we
to
have is
feel
like
the feelings, huh?
all we have is like 90s R&B songs, and it's like, dog,
Are you
like,
talking about your neighbor?
and first of all, they don't even sing like that anymore. I was not talking about my neighbor, but like we can do like so like one morning I woke up and I heard like all the songs that one would traditionally play when a breakup happens, and like he was it wasn't just he was bellowing at the top of his lungs, hitting every note of that Jasmine Sullivan song. And I was like, yo, I've been here. Like, I feel you. I completely understand. So, like, but again, a part of it, but it's also, and that's the thing. Think about apartments, right? So, the idea being that, like, this person is going through this thing on their own in this space, when in the adjoining apartment, it's like, yo, there's empathy there, but we're just not
Right,
connected in that way.
right,
Which is like, but yeah, like, I think that's what and I was gonna say like the R&B thing is like they're not even really crying like that anymore. But so like Joe was it it was Joe to see where they were like, yo, it's been an hour since you've been gone, and like they were already in the desert in like leather suits. Like so like has it been an hour? Is she still there? But we had to go drive to the desert. Like this is a detraction. I apologize. Right? Like,
it was me. I brought your neighbor up. I just remembered.
no, but I think the idea being that like again it's just like it's well, yeah, we're trained to like do these I so we're trained to like do these things like individually, and it's like nobody I don't think people have the tools inherently to do this stuff, right? So again, all you get is like people sitting in dark corners like not really
Right.
like processing the things when
Hmm.
sometimes yo you need like when you need feedback. There was a thing about like I don't remember what they call it, but like the stud there was a study done about like how many hugs people need to kind of get through the day. It was like whatever it was called, right?
Oh. Hmm.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
it's just like again, we're not really connecting. Like we've literally like built the system where we're just not connecting with each other.
Yeah.
Um, and
How
it's
many hugs
like
was it? Do you remember?
I think it was eight. I think it was eight, and like I am
8?
severely
My
underhugged.
number was
It is.
brolic
It
then.
is. It is.
Okay,
It
I
is.
was like
It,
32. I'm like, wait,
like
that might be a
no,
lot of hugs.
I am criminally underhugged, right? So like, but the thing, no, but that's what I'm saying too. Like the idea being that like again, if you're in communal spaces and not like going to work, hopping in the car, going directly to the
Mm,
apartment, like it's just like if we're not living very communal lives, and a part
right.
of it is like COVID. I really wanted to go through this thing and not talk about COVID, right? But like that's also
Sorry.
changed. That's also changed how we community, and like I think we're still like there's seasons of grief, and I think this is still a prolonged period of grief,
Yeah,
right? So like so when I talk about like when, tongue in cheek, but also like I feel it in the deepest way. Like when I say I'm microdosing grief, is because it's everywhere.
right. We still haven't we still haven't grieved, we still haven't grieved, like we're still not out of COVID. No matter what y'all think at home, I don't give a fuck. We're still
And it
not
was
out of it. And so how are we able to grieve it when similarly, like on like a one-on-one basis, individually, you can't grieve because like you gotta go to work tomorrow.
Hmm.
You gotta show up to XYZ. Like, well, you get the messaging that you have to, and also you gotta survive. So yes, you have
Hmm.
to, at least in this system. So like where do you have the space, the time, the place to even know, to even recognize that you are grieving in the first place? We don't even
And
have that.
and we got to a spot where like even hugging was a thing you couldn't do.
Mm,
Right. So like I think so one of the things
right.
was like so me being in the school system at that time, we were telling kids, hey, I know you haven't seen them in a while, but you cannot hug them.
Yeah, that's rough though. Like
Right.
for kids that
Yeah.
sometimes like that's the only place they get it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and thinking of like all the ways that like we have reinforced like separation.
Mm,
And like the idea being that like we need to go back to connectedness. And I think us having these like brave spaces, us having these like sharing spaces where like we feel things publicly, like it's important.
yeah.
Like I think not only it's important, but it's also vital to like us being like around human beings.
Yeah. We've laughed a lot during this episode.
Mhm.
During this episode of grief. Friend,
That's
talk to
how I
me about
grieve.
the intersection of grief and laughter and humor.
That's how I mean like I think I do a lot of really good I do a lot of things well. I think up high on that list is like is humor, right? So like I think and I think but it's also and it's not this like, again ancestral, right? So like when you are in spaces where there isn't a lot of power, the way that you shift perspective, the way that you shift and deal with the thing in front of you is like to make a joke out of it. So we can talk about like Twitter on like the worst days. Like if like yo, like they got um what's it called? In the middle of the Arab Spring, like there were mad jokes. In the middle of like what's it called? Like this is Oscar Pistorius or whatever, mad jokes. Like in the middle of like the darkest moments, you will find the most hilarious people because like humor is a way that people deal with grief.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I tell a story about when I was like I want to say maybe like 12 and like I went to a funeral and nobody knew that the person who was being buried had a twin. And and like I'm in
Oh,
the back pew
no.
looking around like, yo, why is nobody else reacting? What is going on? And it being the most hilarious funeral I've ever been to this day. To this day. Like it was like she was buried somewhere in the middle of like Jamaica's not huge, but somehow the bus got lost. Right? There were like buses, there was a convoy of buses, and one bus just didn't get there. There were like so many like hilarious and again, like that's also the connected spirit of it, right? So again,
Yeah.
we are laughing to get through the situation. Like, yes, there is pain, yes, there, but it's also like you got to be able to balance it, right? Like it's just like it's not, and it's also remembering the person and honoring the person is remembering the funny moments, like remembering the things that like because for me it's like yo, we're gonna go to a funeral. There's gonna be jokes because we're talking about a person's life, a person who
Right.
was hilarious, right?
Right.
Um, I yeah, it's not. I'm not here for the boxes, right? Like I think we're like very. And it was just funny that I'm saying this because I'm a person who used to like famously compartmentalize. Um, but like a part of it is like, yo, we're not any one thing. We're like very like we are complex. We do a lot of different things, and like some things just get us through, and like laughter is the part of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm always gonna find the funny.
Yeah. How has you exploring stand up?
Oh yeah, that's the
How has
thing.
you exploring stand up? How has that been like another outlet for you? How has
Mhm.
that been different from your writing, from like
I
your
was,
writing that you're used to?
so what's funny is like I was gonna say like so a part of it was like remember from the same conversations I was talking about the black conversations on the IG screen. Like
Mm,
so I'd known Rob Santos for a really long time. Rob Santos is
mm,
like a comedian. who was like big in New York, has been in Connecticut for some time as well, but does stuff all over the place. He's definitely not regional, right? So again, but he's just like really good people. He's just really good people. He's like a really good like he's the person who wants to share the stage, wants to have really dope conversations. But again, what I love the most about the comedy is it's from this space. It's from this vulnerable healing space,
Mm.
right? So like he's somebody who um and it's like he's somebody I knew, but I was kind of pushed in his direction. It was like so I'd been asked to do comedy like for a long time. And in the same way I was asked to write a book for a long time. And I was like, yo, like we've had those conversations too, but it was like I was always like, no, I'm dude at the what's that called? I'm dude at the cookout funny, but I don't know if I'm like stage funny, right? Um, but like he was the one that kind of brought me in and like actually put he has like a workshop called Each One Teach One. So he had me audit the workshop a couple of times, but also like a part of it was being able to be in that space with comedians because I never really had like conversations with comedians before. So being in a workshop where like these people are getting paid to be funny and it's like, oh, y'all are laughing. Oh, we're having deep conversations about like just like the mechanics and how this works. Oh, I could really see this, right? So it was because sometimes again in the same thing with the vulnerability conversation, you just need to be able to see it. You
Mm.
don't know you can do it until you like see and speak to the people who actually are doing it. So I think it was a really cool way to like have these conversations, but it was also, I think for me, the vulnerability has to be a part of it because I think like being on stage is essentially if you're doing it right, like people have to feel something.
Yeah.
So they're not gonna feel anything if you're not sharing anything,
Right.
right? Like you're giving them a part of yourself. Like a part of it is like it's low key, no, it's high key therapy that you get paid to do, like depending on where you are with it. Right. So the writing style has been really different because it's also what I found is when you perform that night, you're not performing for right now, you're performing for the next time. Because it's like you're performing to
Mm.
figure out what works and what doesn't work. Like
Oh.
this is where you test your material,
Hmm.
right? So because again, same thing. I think for me, my thought process was comedy was like you're writing in a room, like a recluse. But I've been invited to like spaces where we're to writing sessions where we're writing together, and like
Yeah.
that's been really. So it's and even like having conversations around like I love being the person in the room who doesn't have all the information. And I'm trying and I'm seeking those spaces out.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of like exploring something new. I need to do it more. Like I've been like on the bench for a little bit, so I definitely need to do it more. Um, so yeah, like I'll tap in to get more of that done. But it's been a really cool device because again, like I said, it's the writing style is different, but like I've always been good on my feet. I've always been good in front of a crowd. But it's a lot more extemporaneous. So which I'm also good at, but I think the issue for me is like trying to figure out what my structure needs to be in a space that requires you to be extemporaneous.
Mhm.
Yeah. But and it's just it's if you do it right, it's a venting session that like everybody can kind of connect to.
Hmm. So then talk to me about your writing.
Hmm.
It's they're both writing, but like your other writing, how has that been? How has like what sort of a space is that for you? Is that a healing space for you? If so, how has it changed? How has it evolved for you?
It's an exploratory space. It is definitely a healing space. The issue continues to be I'm fiercely protective of the things that I write. So even though it is getting like it's becoming more vulnerable, that's what makes sharing it harder.
Mm.
But like it definitely, but it's also like again, like I've had really good opportunities too. So I was able to go because I think I connect. I've also been able to pick and choose what I connect to. So like I've
Mhm.
been so we did the Just Kin Festival where it was like celebrating like just celebrating like people like the people who like are from other places, just people who are like immigrants, migrants, and so on. There's just like just vaulting our stories.
Mhm.
So that was something that I immediately connected to. So like when I got the opportunity to be like, hey, tap in, I jumped into it because it made more sense. So again, I've been able to be better at like I'm not gonna say yes, I haven't been as out there as I need to be, but I think the things I've chosen to do have been more impactful because it's aligning. It's it because I'm seeking alignment,
Mm,
right? So like I've been more
mhm,
aligned to the things that I've been. I feel more aligned to the work that I've been doing. Whereas like before, I just go to any open mic. Now it's like, all right, cool. Like I'm tapping in. A, I'm tapping in, and B, I've been in a space where like people know to tap me in,
right.
right? So like, because that was the thing too. Like again, we have these conversations, we're doing these things, and sometimes sight on scene, people are like, "Yo, I've seen what you do." Well, that's not sight on scene. That's like scene, but not discussed. Like, but like I think what I do like is because because I'm walking in a space where I'm trying to feel things publicly.
Mm,
Um, people are seeing and reaching out. That's been, and again, it's easy to figure out alignment when I make it clear what I'm here for.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah, so like, so that's the writing has been more personal. The writing has been again, like the writing kind of shifted too. Like it went from because, and I've said this as well. Like it's been more about sharing my stories, and so like it's still written from a very black place because like that's just where it's going to be. But I
mhm.
think there was a shift where like I think I was hiding in plain sight. So I am an immigrant, and like that hasn't always been something that I needed. I felt like I needed to discuss, and then things kind of shifted for immigrants, and it was like, all right, cool, we got to kind of share our stories, right? That's so I'm doing more of that out of a space of necessity, but also because it's fun, right? So like
Yeah,
it's fun like connecting in that way. And it also felt like a thing that I wasn't because it's easy to go to the black stuff because again, like when I get pulled over, they don't ask me for my passport.
yeah.
Um, but it's another part of me that like it's another connection point.
I would push back on you saying that with the writing becoming more vulnerable, you're more, what is it, protective of it?
Yes, I always have been. Like, this isn't like, but
I
go
would
ahead.
push back on that though, only because lately I have seen from you a lot more vulnerability, in particular, like on social media, where you got these little, I'm gonna call them corner posts.
Yo, like Rob told me the
Because all the
same thing.
text
Like,
is in one corner.
yeah,
And to me, yeah, I am seeing from you a lot more intentional vulnerability, if anything. I mean, you might not give like all the details to everybody, but again, I'm of the mindset that you don't need to. But I would say that you are being more open, more vulnerable with folks, more sharing your words with community, which you should because they're brilliant. Have said that from day one. Will continue to say that. Um,
thank you.
yeah, so I would push back on that and say that you may not recognize it, but I see a different level of vulnerability from you
I
through your words.
I appreciate the pushback.
It's what I'm here for. Oh, do you hear that?
No,
Oh, okay, great.
was I
We're
supposed to?
not we're
Like,
not recording in the library parking lot again.
oh, yes, yes, hilarious.
That
There,
was
I
great.
I hear no sirens. I hear no sirens because it
Or
was
or gunshots.
yeah, it was a library parking lot right off Main Street where all the things happened. Yes, it's a guerrilla recording. It was like, no, like we gonna own this space.
There were a lot of those for the last podcast, which
Hmm.
was The Creative Alchemist for anybody at home that wants to listen to it. It's still up. So by all means, go check it out. Um, what question that's coming to mind the most right now, because we're gonna wrap up soon. But friend, what do you need?
I need these spaces.
Mm,
That's been a thing that's been like again, like it's funny because I think I'm having that thought in this conversation. And yeah, like again, like I said, like I've worked to kind of like build these spaces, but I'm being better at using these spaces. Like I do need, because it's one thing as a facilitator. As a facilitator, you're not in the game as a facilitator. You're really not. Like it's like again, I'm gonna create a space. I'm gonna share. We're all gonna share, but it's about the people in the group.
Yeah.
Whereas I need to be in the group.
Mm, right.
Like I need this space in the group
Right.
to focus on the things that I'm going through. I need to continue having these conversations. I need to keep on leaning into this is the feeling that I'm going through. And I also like I think back to the thought of like there being no wasted seasons, is like what do I need to learn in this space? Like
Mm,
what are the things? Because again, the thing that will continue to be constant as you get older that nobody tells you is going to be like deep, intense grief, right? Like
yeah.
it's a thing. And like I think us knowing that makes it easier for us to like I think that we're sold a lie that it's like all like flowers and rainbows. And if we go into the world thinking that, it's a disservice. So the thought process is what do I need to learn in this moment of like in this moment of pain, in this moment of grief that like helps me push through better when things are going well. Like what are the
Yeah.
things like what do I do? This is like what do I do in my what do I do in my times of like what is it called? Like what do I do in my times where it's calm to like to fortify myself for the days where it's not as calm?
Mm. So then I have to ask, what have you learned, if anything, or what are you learning? Um, and then what are you doing, or what have you done in the calm that is helping you through the storm?
Um being intentional,
Mm,
um being slow,
mm,
um definitely like finding distractions have been helpful and necessary, but like trying to make sure that like the so I've been distracting myself for like meaningful work, but also
mhm.
remembering to come back to myself.
Yeah.
Um, there are moments where, again, like I said, I try to like make sure everybody's good, but in the moments where I'm not around anybody and like the eyes start to burn and the they well up and like these things are happening, just kind of sitting in that moment and trying not to like push through it.
Yeah.
Um, letting that glory tear get off.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
um, and just kind of like again, just like it's moments of stillness. Like I think for me, it's just been because again, I think we try to run away from the thing, or we trying to like we're literally trying to like move away from it. Where like sometimes in this moment, you just need to be still.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, sharing the thing. Um, you don't get through anything by lying about it. So again, use discernment, but like share the thing. Yeah, just share the things.
Yeah.
So even though I don't know what I need, um, this feels like a thing that is like is that's why I was like I wanted to have this conversation because it's been useful.
Yeah. Yeah. I recorded a conversation with Kion, which by the
Mhm.
time this comes out will have already come out.
Check it out.
Yes, if you haven't, if you just skip to this one, go back and listen to that one too. Um,
No, but if you did, I appreciate you. If you saw like the list and you were like, oh, this person has three names, like, like however you decided to make your choice, I appreciate it. But again, Kion is so dope. So check that out too.
Facts. But something that Kion mentioned in our conversation was something that she heard, I think on a podcast or from a book, possibly Glennon Doyle, was something about like the messy middle.
Hmm.
And I that's immediately what came to mind for me when I went to ask you, "Hey, do you want to reschedule?" Because to me, you were in the messy middle, and I was like, not everybody. Something that Kion also mentioned was not everybody is equipped to talk about being in it while they're in it. Um, and so I think it was huge of you to get on right now and have this conversation with me while being in the messy middle. Um, so I appreciate it, and I appreciate you, friend,
Samesies.
always. If you skip to this episode, wow, Patrick is a fan of yours.
Facts.
Last thing, um, what's a message that you would like to send to your future self from this from right where you are right now?
I trust you. You got that shit.
Mhm. Oh, I got chills. I love it. Hmm. Friend, thanks for
Yep.
conversing with me.
Anytime.